we never. In the shadows where the spirits weep, a team of souls continue to seek. From the bell time they bravely tread the roofs of a crowd team.
Hello and welcome back to Paranormal NL Podcast, located in Newfoundland and Labrador, Canada. That's right, PNL Podcast for short. I'm your host and founder, Jen Noseworthy. Thank you for tuning in to UPRN, United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 FM in that Gulf. For tonight's Paranormal Author Special on UPRN, segment number 27, I've got a special guest from Boston, Massachusetts, waiting backstage, who I'll bring on shortly. So grab your favorite beverage and get ready. Paranormal NL Podcast is sponsored by the BOG Team. It's a boots-on-the-ground BOG team doing historical paranormal investigations in Newfoundland, Canada. PNL Podcast believes in supporting international paranormal networking and highlighting global paranormal people, places, and things. If you'd like to be a guest on my show or have a historical or heritage building you'd like investigated in Newfoundland, contact paranormalnl.podcast@gmail.com and follow PNL Podcast and the BOG Team on their Linktree PNL Podcast. Now let's get on with the show. Tonight I have all the way from Boston with me. We've got Sam Baltrusis. Welcome back, Sam.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, Sam, you were on Paranormal NL Podcast Season 2, Episode 141. That was before we were on UPRN. That was
Awesome.
like right before we were on UPRN. I think I remember that. And we got to give a few shout outs. Hey, we got to give a shout out to, I want to say, I think the person who recommended y'all to me, I want to say it was Beyond the Haunting. When the girls, Leanne Sellenbach and Corinne Carey and Kelly Ireland, they were here and they were on the show Season 2, Episode 125, right? Not too long before you. So tell us a little bit about you for the people across the world who don't know who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So Sam Baltrusis, author of 18 paranormal-themed books. I've done a lot of television shows, including the one that I was on with Beyond the Haunting called History's Most Haunted. I was super busy. My primary passion is writing books. I like to immerse myself at the locations when I write my books. So I'm known for Ghosts of Salem, Haunts of the Witch City. Currently writing a book on haunted castles of America. So it's called New England's Haunted Castles of New England. And so the books are primary passion, but the television shows are great because they promote the books.
Yes, they do. And you've been in a lot of TV shows, Sam. Do you want to talk about some of them?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like the TV, I will say this, like currently the way TV is running, so what's good about it is the Travel Channel is re-airing everything that I've ever done, like over and over again. So it's awesome. But it's to the point where like when you turn on Travel Channel, it's like, oh, it's Sam again, and I think that, that's awesome. So the shows that they keep re-airing is Most Terrifying Places. I did a segment on the U.S. of Salem, and also, of course, Salem, Massachusetts. I was on the 100th episode of A Haunting, and I was also a producer on that TV show. And A Haunting is a long-running program that was an hour-long, just like it basically looked at various cases, and mine involved an attachment that nearly killed me from 2016. I've also done Haunted Towns, and that was also in Salem. There was a documentary that I did called House in Between Two, and that was fantastic. I was able to go down and use my abilities as a medium and read the property in down south, and so that was amazing. And many other shows that I'm trying to remember all the different programs. But what's good about the programs, it really does expose people to my books.
Yes, you've got a lot of different books. Now, I think you just recently put out one, right?
I did, yes. It was Ghosts of Sleepy Hollow, Haunts of the Headless Horseman, and that was so much fun to write. It was, of course, Sleepy Hollow, New York, and right outside of Manhattan. And I actually used to live in New York City, so that was fun, just being able to go back and explore the various hauntings associated with that region. And people may or may not know the story, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, but it was written by Washington Irving in the 1800s. It became a phenomenon. It was sort of like America's first monster, if you will. And the Headless Horseman, people have reported seeing him, although it's a fictional story. So what I do in my book is I really look at the idea, like why are people like actually having encounters with the Headless Horseman? Because he never existed, and there wasn't a ghost that sort of like inspired the story. And I also looked at the others. Folklore and the legends of
Sam,
lore.
going back to that Headless Horseman, could he be like when I was talking to Patty Negri recently, could he be an egregore, something because people talk about it so much, it actually, appeared and is thriving because people are talking about it?
Yeah, that's what the book. That's what I talk about a lot in the book. I talk about that. I do think it's a thought form manifestation, and it's also interesting that the appearances of the Headless Horseman intensified after the story came out. It was sort of their pop culture back in the 1800s. So there were multiple sightings. There was people walking over the Headless Horseman Bridge, carrying a pitcher of beer as they were walking across the bridge, and supposedly the Headless Horseman came by and pushed the guy over the bridge, things like that. Do we still have Headless Horseman sightings? We do, but it's not as well documented as they were in the 1800s. So I do strongly agree with Patty Negri that I do think it's an egregore thought form manifestation.
Yeah, and I want to say congratulations for being on the top 100 list. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, 3 of my books this past week have been on the top 100 list, and even just breaking one book into the top 100 is a big deal. So, Ghost of Salem is regularly on the 100 list, but I've had Ghost of Sleepy Hollow, I've had my book Paranormal Provincetown, which was written several years ago, appear on the list. Of course, Ghost of Sleepy Hollow, and Cambridge, which has been kind of a hit lately, and that was my second book, and I'm kind of surprised that one keeps been appearing on the book on the list. But I also know that my books, people kind of refine them, and I love it when they do. And out of all the books that I wrote, the one that never really got the publicity or the attention was Ghost of Cambridge, and that was after Ghost of Boston and before Ghost of Salem. And that now that people are finding it now, it's amazing. It makes me happy.
Do you want to talk a little bit about, I know we touched on it when you were on the show last time, about something that I guess you could call it keeps following you?
Yeah, so I do, and every time I talk about the entity that I basically stalking me, it has a hat, has red glowing eyes. The story goes, and actually was talked about in the show History's Most Haunted, with Beyond the Haunted, and they so it's an ongoing situation. So I work the overnight shift in Salem, and there's a reason why I don't live in Salem. It's because I have this stalker that presented itself. And I was working the overnight shifts. I heard what sounded like someone was like banging on a piece of metal. I go outside to see if someone's breaking into the bookstore next door. I look into the window and I see the man with the hat and the red glowing eyes. And I've actually have seen him before things that happen in my life that are kind of major deals. So I've learned. At first, I was terrified of him, and I remember connecting, looking at him, being terrified, but also being frozen in fear. And he was like, "Can you see me?" And I'm like, "Yes, I can see you." And this was done telepathically.
And I had to mention, Sam, I'm going to interrupt to mention, in this picture, behind you stood up with the girls. When you were on that show, remember when you were on with me? I drew your attention something that happened in the background. I was trying to find the actual video, but I think you had to be on a paid platform or something to watch it. But behind y'all, when y'all were talking, a shadow figure flashed past and went in through a wall. And you went back and looked at it, and that's, do you think it might be that?
Yeah, I have the video if you want to, I'll send it to you from that. But yeah, like after what we were filming the show, a lot was happening around us. including this man with a hat. Like I was saying before, I do feel like that my relationship with this entity is more of a protector, or almost like a crisis apparition, as opposed to something that I'm afraid of. So maybe it was protecting me. But yes, when I rewatched the show, you can clearly see a shadow man or shadow figure dart by behind the ladies from the show, the investigators. And so that was shocking, because I thought maybe it could be someone on a bicycle. It could be, I'm still not sure what it was. I did bring it up to them, and they said that because we were in a sort of a busy part of Salem, it could have been someone slipped by behind us, but it just moved so quickly.
Right,
And
and it went into a wall, like, it
yeah, I
didn't
did go into
go
a wall.
behind the wall, 'cause I didn't notice it until my husband pointed it out, and I was like, "Oh," so we kept rewinding it. This was, right after, I think, right before I talked with you before last year, I wanna say, and yeah, it definitely went into the wall. But do you wanna tell folks more about the actual entity and how, not the entity per se, but the history of how you related to, um, some of the township things in that episode?
Yeah, so just to reiterate, every time I do talk about it, I give it energy. So I really don't like
Oh,
giving it more
oh,
energy
yeah.
than I should. But I mean, since we're on the show, I'll give you some backstory. So it's one of those things where now I feel like it's more of a crisis apparition, but the whole backstory to it is, so once I realized I was related to the Putnam family and to other people that are connected to pretty heinous crimes in New England, that's when it presented itself. So my theory is that perhaps it's a family member from the 1600s. The way he looks, it's not the typical hat man, if you will. It has actually kind of a pilgrim Puritan hat, and so I think perhaps it's a family member, and that's when he presented himself. Is when my mother was going through genealogical research, and she found that we're related to the Putnam family, but also to Lizzie Borden as well. So I do think it's something related to that. And again, when my father passed, my stepfather passed, I saw him. I actually had a fire last year that destroyed my home.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh, Sam, I'm sorry.
it's no, I mean, but the point is, I saw him. He was trying to warn me,
Okay,
So I do view it. I do view it as almost like, hey,
a good thing. Yeah.
well, not no, it's
Well,
not
he
a good.
warned you, right? Did he warn you to get out?
You don't want to see him. It's not a
Oh,
good thing.
okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I guess we can switch gears and move to another topic. I know, we were talking a lot about some of your TV appearances, but you've also got a lot other on the road appearances this year. You're all over the place.
I am. Yeah, I travel a lot, and that's great because I'm able to meet all people all over the country. I would love to come to Canada, actually, because I do. I've shot several shows in Canada. I did Paranormal Night Shift. I filmed there. I flew into Toronto a lot to do a lot of filming. So some of the shows, especially now with the current climate, they'll just air in Canada. So it's nice to. I would like to go back to Canada.
Well,
Uh,
we would love to have you here. Come back.
but this year it's all over the country. I'm doing events. So Dragon Con's a big one. It's in Atlanta, and that's in August. There's an event called Paranormal Rock down in Wisconsin, and that's at the Broadhead Manor, and that's in July. I'm doing uh, an event in New Hampshire on July 17th. That's happening. But I'm also doing my own personal events, and I'm doing this amazing event on Halloween night. And there's only actually a few tickets left, and probably by the time this airs, it's going to sell out. But this is at Skeen Manor, and that's in Whitehall, New York, which is upstate New York, and it's right outside of Vermont. And beautiful, beautiful location. Before I go there, I don't necessarily know the historical backstory. I just know that the energy from that place, especially the woods behind it, is just so
Okay.
magical. And
What is it about the woods, right, Sam? Every time we do investigations, the spirit box tells us stay out of the woods.
yeah, I mean, my experience. I actually, it says go into the woods. So I I really I'm really interested in the woods behind Ski Manor. But yeah, I think there's elemental energies, and I think that's a lot of people, especially in the paranormal field, they kind of categorize what they're dealing with. They automatically want to think it's like a demonic or and it's not. It's actually elemental in nature, and I think that there's a lot of elemental energies at Ski Manor and the land behind it.
That's interesting you mentioned that, because recently we got one that said, "I've been here 1,000 years and this land is cursed." I mean, like you said, you just don't know what it is you're dealing with or talking with.
Yeah,
And
I
that
mean, elementals I think are really misunderstood. I think a lot of the stories, I can name a few where I think it was more elemental, like the Conjuring house. I think that the whole parent family, the basis of the Conjuring, we know that it wasn't Bathsheba Sherman, but I do think that if you really look at the land, it's stained with blood. There's a lot of backstory there that's related to King Philip's War that could have, there could have been energy on the land back hundreds of years, thousands of years. So I do think what's on the property at Conjuring House is ancient. I think that on the land at the Hinsdale House in New York, same thing. I think it's also ancient. And they tried to do an exorcism on the house for when it was owned by the Dandy family. And I think the reason why it didn't work is because they were trying to use Christian like crosses and that sort of thing. And I think with elemental energies, it's more Native American,
right.
and you
Mhm.
want to be able to, I guess, honor the land and honor them. And if you approach them like that, it's actually a lot less. I think it works in my opinion. If you do like an honoring ceremony, it works with the elemental energies.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that, because it's always important to honor wherever you're going. And I know that other house that we had up there that looked like a really interesting house. There is another place you're going to, Nightmare Weekend in Chicago in May.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Like, yeah, I'm doing a lot of events that I haven't really done in the past, and Nightmare Weekend is one of them. And that's near and dear to my heart because that's actually where my brothers and sisters are. I have some brothers and sisters in Chicago, and so I'm able to see them since my dad passed. So it's good to reconnect with my family, and also a lot of like Broadhead Manor in Wisconsin. My little brother Joey drives up with his family, and we're able to go while I'm doing the weekend. I'm able to meet with my family. So that
Nice.
part,
Okay.
I try my best to be as close to my family as possible.
Yeah, yeah. Family is always important, 100%. And you got another one here, Spirit Squad crossing over. That's in June.
Yeah, and that's not an event. That's a group of empaths that I work with, and this is after doing 10 sessions, intensive sessions. So it's not public per se. It's people that when I go to these events across the country, I try my best to find at least one Spirit Squad member, and it's kind of grown to about 60 people. So Spirit Squad is a group of mediums that I mentor, and we investigate together. We have classes, we learn. I bring in guest speakers. It's an amazing group.
That looks fun. Yeah. You do all kinds of stuff. Is there one book that you have in particular that you like the most that you wrote?
It's really hard to say my favorite book. I mean, the one that had the biggest impact is Ghost to Salem, and the I it's still the one that that does the best. I think the one that I loved writing the most was Ghost to Sleepy Hollow. That was a lot of fun to write. I did have to like that's when the fire happened at right when I was writing that book. So that was difficult. And I do feel like that there was something related to that investigation that caused the fire. And it's not the man with the hat. I think it was something else that happened. There was the bronze lady at the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. And I feel like the whole story is if you disrespect her, something bad will happen. And I thought, yeah, whatever. So we were there taking, my friend April and I were there. She was taking selfies. She didn't ask permission from the bronze lady at the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. And I go home and the about a month later, and also too, I thought that I dropped one of my stones, one of my crystals at the cemetery, and it actually wasn't. It was her crystal. And so I put it in my pocket. I brought it home with me. So a month later, that's when the fire took place. So I did have the apparition. So the man with the hat, kind of came through the wall the night before the fire, and I'm like, get back, you're not allowed in my house. And I told him to get back, but he was trying to warn me about the fire the following day. So
Okay.
as I was writing the section on the Bronze Lady, that's when there was a fire right above me. So a gentleman brought in this moped that set off the sprinklers. The sprinklers destroyed everything in my apartment.
Oh,
We're
Sam,
talking
that's so sorry.
years and years of research. And then after I lost all my furniture, I had to get all brand new furniture. And then so while I was, I had 2 days to get out of my apartment. I was living out of a hotel. And luckily my computer was saved. It was sitting on my desk. That rock that I took accidentally from the Bronze Lady, the statue, I kept that rock as well. I was able to salvage some of my research, but everything else was lost. And then I'm like, you know what? I somehow pissed off the Bronze Lady. So I go back about 3 days later to give the rock back to the Bronze Lady, and I did an honoring to her. I'm like, I'm so sorry if we offended you in any way. We brought the rock back, and then the energy shifted at the location. And so this is a legend. Yeah, this is a legend that a lot of people have experienced, and I thought that it was bogus, but now I believe that this could actually happen.
Yeah, I mean, it could. You never know, right? You hear a lot of people talk about, if they go to a haunted location and they take home something that they weren't supposed to, and then something bad happens, then they bring it back and say, "Oh, sorry, I had this, and I'm giving it back to you because I had too many weird things happen," or, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole back. It goes back, and this is back to the egregores thought form manifestations. I do think the kids go there and they like smack the Bronze Lady, and
Yeah.
things happen. So I think that this energy, whether or not it's actually a curse, I'm not sure. I just think that I didn't go in really thinking that the curse could have happened. Like I never thought that in a million years that it would result in my apartment being destroyed.
Yeah.
So and usually the things that happen are like kind of silly things, like one. Well, not so silly things, but this woman was in the New York Times, and in the New York Times piece, she said that about a month after disrespecting the Bronze Lady, a tree fell on her Camaro. So
Oh,
that kind of like
okay.
dates her. And so yeah, I mean, I think the stuff people have had experiences there, whether or not it's actually the woman behind the statue, because there is a real woman that the statue is basically based off of. And so yeah, she was looking over her husband, the statue is, and it's been around since I think the 50s or 60s.
Okay. Interesting story about that. Tell us more about, I think you were on with Dave Schrader, right? The Shock Docs?
Yeah, I did a shock doc with Dave Schrader and Chris Fleming. It was called The Curse of Lizzie Borden, and that was filmed a couple of years ago. It won a gold Telly, which is sort of a top prize in the film, the television industry. Yeah, it was that was shot during COVID, and so it still was. There was a lot of energy at that property, and the energy. The investigation still is near and dear to my heart. It was probably the most terrifying investigation I've ever done, and it's now on Max. It was originally shot for Discovery Plus and Travel Channel, but because there's issue with Travel Channel not airing original programming, they actually moved it over to Max. So Max is a streaming service that you can still watch that show.
Tell us a little bit about your experience there. I know it was pretty terrifying, or emotional, shall we say.
Yeah, it was super emotional. So getting back to the family ties, the reason why I was actually brought on as a talking head. And a talking head is where you are an expert in the field. And because of the books that I've written on the Borden case, I was more brought on for that perspective, but also the fact that I did investigate the house for many years. So like I had a lot of experience investigating that location specifically. So
Mhm.
my thoughts with the Lizzie Borden house is that I think it's over investigated, and I think that a lot of what we experienced during the investigation was included original ghosts, but also included stuff, baggage that's left behind by other investigators. So we go in, Dave Schrader, Chris Fleming. Dave called me in because of my
Shout out to Dave, right?
I'm sorry?
I said shout out to Dave.
Yeah, Dave's great. And so when Dave called me into the location and he's like, Sam, like we need somebody else here, someone with ties to the family. I walk on set, and I am clairvoyant, and but I also started to channel during the session, actually at the spot where the murder of Andrew Borden took place, and I wasn't expecting it. I'm like, Dave, I'm about to channel, and he's like, okay, and he gets his recorder, and so he started recording what happened, and I was actually connecting with Eliza Borden. Eliza Borden is something that is tied to the family, but didn't happen at that house, and I started channeling. She killed her children. So there's a whole supposedly a family curse that's related to the Borden family that we look into in the documentary.
Yeah. There's a lot of history there at that place for sure. Is there any other ones in particular that you want to talk about? Any other shows that you're on?
I mean, there's
so many.
There's a lot.
Where do we start, right? And you were on this. There's so many different shows. Where do we start, right? There's.
Yeah, we could. I mean, The House in Between Two was filmed, and I was brought in as a medium as well. So what's good about the Curse of Lizzie Borden is that I kind of came out of the crystal closet, if you will. So I'm like, listen, when I go on investigations, I work as a medium, and on that show was when I kind of did it for the first time publicly, and not as a historian that I normally am on shows. So I did House in Between Two as a medium for the first time, like on a show after filming Curse of Lizzie Borden, and that was great because he brought me in with a blindfold, and I didn't know where I was going. And for people that don't know the House in Between, it's in Mississippi, and it's like this small house that has a lot of paranormal activity. Steve from Ghost Hunters is the executive producer, so he was actually on set at the house. I didn't know where I was, what the whole backstory to the property. So they're like, Sam, come on the property and just read it. And I'm like, well, can I use and I use dowsing rods a lot.
I love dowsing rods. Yeah.
Can I use my dowsing rods just to kind of give me feel the property? And they're like, no, we just want you to read the land. So I didn't know where I was. I walked around the land, kind of like feeling the energy of the property.
Right.
And I picked up something pretty intense. And this is, I didn't know where I was going, so I couldn't, of course, do any research on the location. And I picked up a lynching and on the property, and I'm like, there was a really brutal, heinous murder that happened right over here. And I didn't want to go on camera with it because I didn't know if it happened or not. And it was really hard for me. So I was actually validated by history, and also there's another medium that joined me after that was able to validate what I was picking up. And that was amazing to have that validation. And then on the show, I'm crying because I was so terrified of what if I messed that up? That's such a important piece of history. That's horrifying what happened to the guy. But what if I said this on a TV show and it was wrong? So there was a lot of emotion involved with that case, and the fact that I was able to do it without they wouldn't let me use my dowsing rods. They were like, it's too woo-woo, and I had to kind of go and rely on the land to give me validation. So I'm like, birds, I can't use my dowsing rods, but birds, if I'm onto something, let me know. And you can hear squawking in the background from the animals and the birds to validate what I was picking up. So that was to me, that said, Sam, you're good at what you do. And it gave me validation, not only from other medium, another medium, Jill, who was on set, but also just it gave me validation from the spirit realm and from the animal realm too.
Yeah. Have you ever been told what your spirit animal is, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that it's private. But I also feel so. I had something happen where it was presented to me, and I'm like, can you show me what my spirit animal is? And I always thought it was a crow or a raven. That's what I want it to be, but it's actually a rabbit. Rabbit is one of my
Yeah.
Guide animals. So you have multiple animals that are
Hmm.
associated with you, and also they kind of pop in when you need them.
Right.
So mine's a white rabbit.
Okay, nice. Okay. And it's interesting that you mentioned, the animals when you couldn't use your dowsing rods. And it's great that yeah, you could tune into other things because so many people rely on just that one thing. And then when they're not allowed to use it or can't use it, it's great that you were able to do that, right? And use the other things to hone in on what happened there.
Yeah, that was the big challenge. The big challenge was to go in again. I could use what I normally use, like dowsing rods, or I mean, even equipment. If we had some sort of like way to validate what I'm picking up, that would have gave me the confidence that I was right. But I didn't have that, so I'm like, what am I going to do? So I'm like, okay, animals of the backyard, can you please validate what I'm picking up? And Alice, who's this lovely lady that owns the property, she was sitting there. You can see her like chin drop when I said what she can. The birds all started kind of like squawking around us. So it was a magical moment, but it was also I'm like I do feel like that I'm in touch with the animals. Like I feel like that they
Yeah,
responded.
they
So
were there. They were helping you, right?
that was great.
Yeah.
And now I know that I can rely on them if I need them.
I love it. Now you were also on, weren't you on with the Boo Brothers and, oh gosh, what Fright Club?
Yeah, I was brought in as an expert for 2 seasons of Fright Club. That was great. The funny Jack Osborne and the Ghost Brothers, and that's another show that airs over and over again too. And and then that show was kind of more fun, I guess. But I was brought in as a shadow person expert because I've had a lot of shadow people experiences. So that they showed a clip and then I responded to it, and yeah, that and it was I would say more. Fright Club was the whole thing is like which clip is the most terrifying clip. None of the clips that I represented were ever considered the most terrifying, but I was proud to be able to work as like a mentor for the people that came on the show with their clips.
So what's your theory on the shadow people, Sam? And there's so many different theories. People think, they're from another dimension or, they're all evil or everybody's got so many different theories. What's your theory on the shadow people?
I think it's different for every case. I mean, I think that I do feel like that some of them are interdimensional. I do think that even getting to the house in between two, there was like a portal. I could actually see shadows kind of coming through the back. And some people think it's actually people trying to manifest. They don't have enough energy to manifest. I do believe in energy, and I do think that shadow to be able to manifest, whether or not they're actually humans, trying to manifest entities trying to manifest. It depends on the situation. I do think that some another theory, and I kind of love this theory. First of all, I don't think they're all bad. I really don't. I think Batman, and that's considered a shadow entity, kind of an upper echelon shadow person. Crisis apparitions as well. And so I think that they could be like warning you about something about to happen. And
Mhm.
so in my situation, I don't want to upset him because he's actually has retaliated not toward me, but to other people that I've been with in Salem. So I don't want to upset him, but I also view him, I guess, more with empathy and more sympathetic. So I definitely don't think they're evil. I think they can be though. I think if you cross them the wrong way, they can really mess you up.
Yeah, and some people have theories that they're kind of just observing and they're going through time and that they can go into different places and in time. But you talked about energy. What do you think helps them gain energy when you're thinking about energy? Do you think it's just like water in particular, or how when you're at an investigation and some people say, "Oh, use my energy," it's like, well, that's never a good thing to do. We always try to say, well, use the batteries or use the crystals or use the water. What do you think?
First of all, people that say like use for them to be able to, the spirits to use their energy is a major no-no. I had that happen at the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. The tour guide was like giving the spirits the permission to use the energy. Major no-no. When I first started experiencing the man with a hat, my friend Dana, who I did another show with called Forbidden History, which I forgot to mention that show. And we did an Estes method session, and she was like, "What do you want from Sam?" And it kept saying energy, energy. So it wants my energy, and it's almost like feeding off my energy. So I did a book called Fueled by Fear, and I really feel like energy is, so especially if you have extreme emotions like fear, and I was so afraid of a lot of things. The fear gave it energy. So even talking about it gives it energy, and that's what I mean. Like, it's a sort of like just energy, the emotion that kind of manifests outside of you that it feeds off of.
Yeah, so it's never a good idea to invite it. So, like, when you were doing your dowsing rods and stuff, like, when did you start doing dowsing rods? Was it a long time ago?
I started doing dowsing rods when I was a tour guide in Salem. I found that while I was giving my tours, I was having experiences, and people on my tours were having experiences. And it was just sort of, I mean, my thoughts with dowsing rods especially is I don't really feel like that it's the ghost moving the dowsing rods. I feel like that it's me able to validate myself. So, is there someone in the room that would like to communicate with me? And if it crosses, it's yes for me. And you also want, kind of like a spirit board, you want to close with your dowsing rods as well. So I probably go back about, I would say, like 12 years or so with my dowsing rods, and it's just something that's become kind of like my wand. It's something that I use all the time. I use it for validation. I will say that my original pair that was charged by my good friend, not my good friend, high priestess, her name's Lori Cabot. She's a big deal in Salem. She actually, she charged the first pair when I did an interview with her years ago. Those actually broke fairly recently, so I had to get new ones made. And it's been kind of an adjustment getting to use these. And these were made in Saratoga, which is like a spiritualism camp. Not Saratoga, spiritualism camp in Florida.
Are they copper ones?
Oh, it's called Casadega, it's called.
Oh, okay. Are yours made out of copper?
Yeah, they're made out of copper, but it's all, they're also charged too. There's energy.
I was going to say, yeah. Do you ever feel drained after using them?
No, I feel good with my dowsing rods. Other situations where I do feel drained, like especially when I'm in a location and the entities are feeding off my energy, I feel drained from that. But as you kind of alluded to before, I'm always going. I work the overnight shift at a hotel. I write books, like 2 books usually a year. I investigate every weekend. I mean, I'm always going. So it could be just natural being drained, getting older,
Well, you've definitely got a lot of books. Do you want to talk about some of your other books?
Sure. I mean, yeah. So Ghost of Sleepy Hollow is the most recent one. I have this year. So I'm actually doing, I mentioned before that I immerse myself at locations. So I wrote a book called Ghost that Conquers Colonial Inn. And this is my first single location book. And the reason why it's important, we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Concord in Lexington. And Concord's Colonial Inn is in Concord, Massachusetts. And I actually worked there for 6 months, and that was great. And so I worked there just to immerse myself to the ghost lore. I actually did debunk a lot. There's a whole story in the Room 24 was used as a makeshift hospital during the Battle of Lexington and Concord. And the truth is, the room that they say that was the haunted room or used as a hospital actually didn't exist in the 1700s. So I debunked that in the book, but I did talk about there is a lot of ghost lore that's picked up at that location. So it's considered one of the most haunted inns in Massachusetts, possibly in the country.
Do you have a favorite location that you go to? I know you've been to a lot of different locations, but do you have a favorite that you like to keep going back to a certain location?
So there are locations I wouldn't consider necessarily always my favorites, but they're locations that keep calling me back, almost unfinished business. I mean, like you said, I've investigated so many locations that I almost get to the point where if I do it too much, I go on to the next one. The one that I'm doing a lot lately, it's called Wilson Castle, and Wilson Castle is based in Proctor, Vermont. And that's a location that I've been going to, I would say like 3 or 4 times a year. I'm currently writing my book called Haunted Castles of New England. So Wilson Castle is going to be a major player at that location. So that's a location that I go to a lot. And that's really the reason why I like it so much is just the property and like learning, like, and also the fact that it's the person that owns, her name's Denise. She's lovely. She's a wonderful person. So I just like going back there. The energy's good. It feels positive. I feel safe there. So I like going back there. There are locations that I've only investigated once that I can't wait to go back to. But it's a place called Broadhead Manor, and there's the Paranormal Rockdown happening in July, and that's in Wisconsin. And last year I went there and I had another experience with dragonflies. And so we were doing a drumming circle out on the land to honor the Native American spirits on the land.
Nice.
And
Okay.
I was with other two Native Americans, and there were drumming circle, and these really large dragonflies came out of nowhere, and they kind of circled us, almost like they were dancing around us while we were doing the drumming circle. So
Nice.
that was beautiful. And I want to go back, and I'm not sure if that's going to actually repeat itself. I mean, I hope it does, but that was just such a wonderful experience that I want to go back there.
Yeah, I like it when stuff like that happens.
Oh,
For
yeah.
sure. Yeah. So what's on your bucket list, Sam, that you haven't done yet? Paranormal wise.
Well, I mean, I definitely, the locations that I really want to go to as a paranormal investigator is the Queen Mary. And I'm actually going to California for an event in August this year, and that's amazing. It's on the USS Hornet, and it's right outside of San Francisco. But I'm doing the USS Hornet, which is a bucket list. Alcatraz is a bucket list, so I'm able to do Alcatraz and also the Queen Mary. So a lot of locations in California. There are locations all over the country. There's a place called Lancaster Castle, and that is in England, and I'm obsessed with called the Pendle Witches. So it's a witch trials that happened 80 years before Salem witch trials in 1692. So that was in 1612 that this happened. And so the Pendle Witches, Lancaster Castle, and I would love to go there sometime this year.
The Pendle Witches. Are you going to write a book about that one?
I would love to juxtapose the Pendle Witches in England versus the Salem witch trials. So, because there's a lot of similarities, there's some differences, but the cases are really similar.
Yeah, they are. When you mentioned that one, that's what I thought about was the one that you did with the girls. Yeah, Beyond the Haunting. But yeah, you've got a lot of good pictures in the different locations that you've been. Where is this? This is a really cool.
Yeah, it's actually in Salem. There was an exhibit called Stickworks, and it was right outside of the Gardner Pengery House, and actually Hawthorne Hotel was right across the street. So it was a piece of art that looked kind of like primitive and like a nest. So it's like I'm coming out of my nest. That actually is right after I had the attachment. So it's almost like a rebirth for me, like that. So that picture is important to me.
It is, yeah. So do you have any other things that happened during your life that really stand out to you that you want to share or anything or any experiences?
I'm old, so there's a lot of stuff I can talk about. But I've had so many, a lot of them have been featured on television shows. So, Paranormal Night Shift, the story that I talked about before about seeing the man with a hat for the first time was on a show called Paranormal Night Shift. Things keep on happening. Like I had even the situation where, with the fire, like that's fairly new. That happened this time last year. So the fact that I'm still having paranormal experiences, I will say this, that they have changed a lot. Now that I go in not being afraid, I'm finding that my experiences are less dramatic because I'm not giving them the fear that they were feeding off of.
Less stuff, yeah.
So I've
fuel.
learned to have fewer experiences because of that. Okay. Like I was terrified everywhere I went. for many years. And so I was kind of like the walk through my fear type investigator. And while I was writing Fueled by Fear, I went to the locations I swore I would never go to, like the Conjuring House, like the Hinsdale House. There's a place called the Sally House in Kansas that I went to, and it was just the energy there was off the hook, but I was able to go there. And so now that I've kind of conquered my fears, they're not responding as dramatically. They're like, oh, we basically drained him, so let's go off to the next victim. But my experiences have been less, and I think the whole learning process is something that I guess I'm proud of, that I was able to kind of learn that, even though I was kind of learning it the hard way, but I was able to learn that out in the field, that they were really responding to my energy and responding to my emotional responses. So if I don't give them that fear, then they leave me alone.
So fear is fuel for the people listening.
Yeah, and hence the name Fueled by Fear, the name of my book.
And I have to share that on the screen here. This is the one, right?
Yeah, Fueled by Fear.
Yeah. So what do you do to protect yourself and not be fueled by fear when you go in?
Well, I mean, it's now kind of like a ritual now that I've kind of learned the hard way. So I do a crystal shield of protection, and that's something I learned from my high priestess friend Dana, who I filmed the show Forbidden History, because we were filming together. We had the Hatman kind of appeared while we were filming, and kind of similar to what happened to History's Most Haunted. And Dana did a crystal shield. So a crystal shield is like a Reiki-based shield. And we do crystal as opposed to white light, because the crystal allows the good energy to come in and it keeps the bad energy out. And so you do like a Reiki chant, Ura Shokuryo, Ura Shokuryo, Ura Shokuryo, Shakare, Shakare, Shakare. And then you basically do a bubble around you. And I do that every time I go, every location I go to. And I've learned, even if I don't think it's haunted, I still do protection. So everywhere I go, I protect myself. I do have protection stones that I use, and I also do black salt is a big thing for me. Like I'll use black salt when I walk out of a location, and I'll like put any of my negative, like my energy, I'll leave it there. And I clearly tell the spirits. I was just at the SK Pierce Victoria Mansion this past weekend, and with my group from Spirit Squad, and I'm like, guys, can't follow me home. And you have to say that out loud. Do not follow me home. And it's worked so far.
Yes, that's important to do, to tell them, that you're not welcome, in your home. And a lot of people, take it to the max, and they strip down their clothes and everything before they come back into their house. But
I actually take up so I did the investigation on Saturday, and I was staying at a hotel that had a bath. I actually did take a salt bath. I use lemongrass. Lemongrass is a really great way to kind of get rid of any negative energies. So I do. I mean, I don't strip down like when as soon as I get home, but I do feel like that. You have to physically cleanse yourself.
yeah, a lot of people say doing a salt scrub is really good.
Yeah.
When you're having your shower and that, or I've had people say, put salt under your bed to absorb stuff. I mean, there's so many different techniques and stuff that people use, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different. I mean, what you basically go with what works for you. What works for me is a lot of things. So I make sure I'm as protected as possible. I will say this: I do the crystal shield of protection, and when you do the bubble, you have to also do it beneath your feet, because I actually had something kind of come through the ground before. So even if you put protection up, like a wall of protection or a bubble of protection, make sure you do a bubble and also go beneath your feet as well.
That's interesting. Now, what happened? You said you had something come out of the ground. What was that?
Yeah, so I do what I call a seance, and seance is my tweaked version of a seance. And you mentioned Patty Negri. I actually have taken her classes. So when I was doing, so to kind of take control of the seances after filming Curse of Lizzie Borden with Dave Schrader, we actually did a seance at the end of the show, and it went awry. Like Dave Schrader got taken over. So I'm like, you know what? I want to do a seance and do it my way and take control. So I trained with Patty Negri, and I highly recommend her classes. She's amazing.
Shout out to
And
Patty.
I do
she
my
is.
treat version of it called a seance. And so I was doing a seance at a church, and it was actually an old church from the 1600s in Winchendon, Massachusetts. Not expecting anything to happen. And we were connecting with spirit on the land. We're actually connecting with the Native American energies on the property. And below came something that kind of went beneath my feet all the way up. I actually got lifted up and thrown on the ground like a rag doll.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it was horrible. So, but I learned the hard way, and we saved, like, what's interesting, we had 2 cameras recording the seance, and as soon as the entity like took me over, if you will, the camera shut down, which I found really interesting. We had audio, all the audio shut down, so the energy was just overwhelming that it shut down all the cameras.
Wow.
And there was a group of like 15 people that literally saw me get lifted up and thrown on the ground like a rag doll.
That's
and so
scary.
I have friends that saw it, so you know, so that's able to kind of like, hey, that actually did happen. But it did change me. It changed me to, like, in a sense that I don't want to put myself in danger anymore. So I kind of toned down. I only do seances when I know that it's a safe location to do it. And you have to be careful. Like that.
Well,
that
exactly, because you don't know what you're channeling, right?
Exactly. And so this was, I mean, it's not the D word. It was actually elemental, but it was a very, very, very powerful elemental energy. So the fact that it can lift me up and almost my hands were lifted up almost like a tree. People in the room said it looked like it was like a tree monster. And I've never heard or seen anything like that. But I mean, multiple people said that.
Interesting. I mean, there's so many different things like spirits and ghosts and, like you said, elementals out there. You just don't know what you're dealing with. So protection is really important. And I hear a lot of people talking about you can go through, the radios and things like that. So sometimes you'll see me sage my radio.
I have a friend, Joni Mahan. She's actually picked up stuff from television. I'm like, really? Like, you could pick it up from television? But like, apparently you can. And then again, guys, protect yourself. I'm a big believer. Catholic prayer works for me, and so I use Catholic prayer a lot. In fact, like that when I was at my lowest, when I did have an attachment, I did the rosary. My grandmother, who's one of my spirit guides, she was really very super Catholic, and so like using Catholic prayer got me through my darkest period. So you use prayer. I mean, really, it works.
It does. It helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody uses their own kind of thing, but there's so many different things that you can use. And like you said, you mentioned Patty earlier. She's awesome. She helps you do that kind of stuff too. But I love that you call it a seance.
Yeah, that was something that someone just jokingly said, "Hey, you're doing a seance," and they were kind of being funny.
I love that though.
Funny. I'm like, oh my god, like that's what I want to call it. Because really, my version is it's more. I would say it's more of like a gallery, so it's more of a kinder, softer version of a seance. But knowing my history, things do happen. So it's like
you never know what might show up, right?
Yeah, and so. It's definitely, my goal is not to attract the darker energies. It's to give a voice to those without a voice. So it's giving a voice to the spirits at the property. Like I did one at Broadhead Manor last year, and it was beautiful. It was like it was Native American energies. So it's a safe and controlled environment where you lift the veil, open the circle for the spirits to tell their story, and hopefully tell it correctly. And then you ask them kindly to step back so they don't follow you home. I find if you provoke them, then they will attack you. So you have to kind of treat them like humans and treat them like energies that you respect.
Yeah. You don't go into somebody's house and start, cursing and yelling at them. They're gonna kick you in the butt, especially if you're, in a place where you're allowed to bear arms. Well, then watch out, right? The same thing in the ghost world as above, so below, right? So
exactly.
So Sam, tell us a little bit about some of your fans. You want to give a shout out to them, where you're going to be at, and some of the places you're going to be?
Sure, yeah. So I'm going all over the country this year. So I mentioned a few of them. So so you mentioned the first one that starts on May 3rd. I'm doing I'm also doing the Trebek Clinic Parafest, which is something that new that just popped up, and that's May 17th when that's happening. And then I'm doing a series of every weekend I'm booked for until November of next year. The one that's fairly, in addition to the Trebek Clinic, that's in North Carolina. I'm doing Con Carolinas, which is like a panel intensive at the very end of May. I'm doing Paranormal Rockdown in July. I'm doing Dragon Con, which is a big deal. That's happening in August. September is the main horror and paranormal convention, and that is in Augusta, Maine, and that's happening September 6th, 7th, I believe, the first weekend in September. There's a new event in Fort Wayne, Indiana that I'm doing in November, and that's the Mysteries of the Fort in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and that is the first weekend in November. And of course, we have the big Spirit Squad investigation at the Skiing Manor on Halloween night. I probably, by the time that this airs, we won't have any tickets left, but I would love to record it somehow because it's going to be amazing. And that's Halloween night that we're doing that. Oh, and I'm also doing Wilson Castle with my dear friend Heidi Kemper. She and I do a lecture together. And then Monique Tusoon, who is my drag queen investigator. That is the USS Hornet in California, the one that you just popped up earlier. So a lot of events, guys. Can't wait to see everybody. And hopefully I'm coming to a location close to you.
So everybody, follow Sam Baltrusis. You're going to love him, and read all of his books and check out all of his cool events all over the place. And we'd love to have you back to Canada.
Oh, I would love that. And I'm actually trying my best. There's a convention in Thunder Bay that I would love to go to.
Yeah, we would love to have you come and hang out with us Canucks. We got lots of ghostly spirits here you can check out. So
Absolutely.
I'm going to leave y'all with a little bit of Bog Team music from Paranormal NL Podcast. Is sponsored by the Bog Team. And again, you're listening in on UPRN, United Public Radio Network, on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 on that Gulf Coast. Now, let's get on with a little bit of music. Thanks so much for being on the show today, Sam. Thanks for being back.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Ghost hunters in the fog, Newfoundland nights. Dark streets whispering under eerie lights. Boots thumping, soft shadows creep real tight. Team on the ground, ready for the fright. Boots on the ground, ghosts in the mist. Paranormal pros, we don't ever miss. From the haunted cliffs to the old ship's twist. Specters in our wake, we making lists. Echoes in the halls, cold breath of the past. Spectral whispers, questions they ask. EVP static, truth coming fast. Chasing shadows, we never can last. In the heritage town, tales time